This is the GTN Show, and yes, I know we are back on the beach, but thought it'd be rude not to, as we are still here in Southern California. But we're here to talk about plastic and what, as triathletes, we can do to help the issue of plastic in our oceans. That's the reason why I'm surrounded by all of this garbage, and I'm not referring to Fraser.
Yeah, don't worry, we are not entirely distracted by the sun, sea, sand, rubbish. We will still have our caption competition, our poll. We will do the transition challenge as well, plus all the race news from the action-packed weekend, including what happened just up the road in Oceanside.
Sitting on this beautiful beach, it's easy to be blissfully unaware of the problem of plastic in our oceans. But when you start to look at the global scale, it is pretty scary.
Yes, it is. And if we think about the last decade, the amount of plastic produced globally is more than the entire century before that. And if we take an example of, say, a plastic bottle cap, that can take up to 450 years to decompose. And when we're doing a sporting event and take a plastic bottle, we're only using it for a few seconds. Globally, there's only 9% of our plastics getting recycled. The rest of it, unfortunately, is going to landfill, it's being burned, or it is being dumped in the oceans. And it is estimated that by 2050, there will be more weight of plastic in the oceans than the fish themselves.
That is really scary stuff. Well, 100,000 marine life every year die from being tangled in plastic, and that's just the actual entanglement. But if you think of what plastic does to birds and the sea life altogether, that's estimated that 1 million per year die from that. There's apparently 100 million tons, I mean, I can't really deal with that number, of plastic floating around out there. And if you think of every day, every 24 hours in the world, 8 million pieces, so imagine this is one piece, imagine 8 million of those go from the land into the sea every single day.
Yeah, it really is awfully difficult for us to wrap our heads around it. So perhaps it is a better idea to take a step back and scale it down to have a look at what's happening on a more local level.
Earlier in the week, we contacted Marc O'Connor from the Surfrider Foundation to find out exactly what the impact of plastic pollution was just here on a local scale on this busy Southern California beach. Well, Marc, first of all, thank you very much for coming along. Now, we're in front of this gorgeous mural. What's the relevance of this to save the ocean? What's going on in this picture?
Well, I love this mural in particular because it shows the food chain. So one of the things that happens is when plastics break down and the smaller they get into microplastics, they start being ingested by the smallest organisms in the ocean. And then the next thing eats it, and it's got plastic, and the next. So what happens is either the source of food will die out, so the bigger fish that we eat, the sardines and the tuna, will be further away from us, or they may even eat something that causes them to die out. So it's a food source for us. It's a food chain.
Marc comes here almost every day of the week to pick up rubbish. We headed up the beach and I was surprised at just how small the plastic pieces were that Marc was finding, but something much bigger had to go past in order for me to spot it.
That's a perfect prop. I was hoping for something like that.
Here we go.
So here's a piece of styrofoam that used to probably be a cup or a great big container. Somebody had their, so it's coming apart into smaller and smaller pieces, and that's what I meant by when it gets into microplastic size, it's really impacting the environment.
So it's almost the stuff you don't see is worse than the stuff you see.
When I have volunteers down here, I will show them the smallest piece, and some of the styrofoam, when it comes apart, it looks like it's round like a little egg. It looks just like it could be an egg that a sea creature would normally eat.
Yeah.
So when it gets that small, it's really dangerous. And the fact that you grabbed this as it went by, I was thinking triathletes probably have a high energy bar or something that they eat.
Oh, yeah.
So
and gel packets.
this needs to be recycled or captured. And there's actually some of the recycling centers around here, when they have events that have these things, they have a container specifically for that, because the recycling centers can recycle this in a different way than having to sort it out of a huge trash pile. Okay. So they do put those separately.
Yeah, I think sport, that's one of our biggest problems, is the fact that you need to take things that are small and can be, contained to make it keep, but also to be able to eat it whilst having it in your pocket and be able to eat it whilst running. Or
if you're hauling butt on your bike, you want that paper, you might drop it. Hopefully they're putting it in a pocket or a pouch.
Who can have the biggest impact? Is it us as the consumer, or is it the companies? Who is most responsible?
Well, you know what? It's going to be the consumer. Unless you can get a real educated, board of directors at a company who gets the message and gets it, it's going to take consumers boycotting, changing the way they shop, changing the things they buy. That will impact that board of directors to do something. So you hope that the company will do it, but it's going to take some nudging and prodding by each and every one of us.
I mean, we're walking along here and picking up little pieces, and it must sometimes feel that how do you make an impact on the bigger scale, and that must feel pretty frustrating.
Sometimes it is, but I'll tell you, personally, I'm going to walk to this point and pick up every little piece of trash I can find, and when I turn around and I look back, I know these people are going to enjoy their experience more. I have taken that out of the environment to be recycled, so personally I don't have that frustration. And then I know that there's more like-minded people like me. It's going to take a village. There's more people doing the same thing, and as we discussed, there's more smarter people than me and the clear piece of plastic who are trying to get upstream and pass ordinances, and attorneys and different people who say that's the...
I mean, that must have just
the
come
mother
here
load
today.
right there. Yeah, probably just washed up. And so I know there's just lots of people who are working on it from every different angle, from education to working with companies trying to change the product. So the goal line is way down there. I'm not frustrated that we're only at the 5-yard line, or we've only finished the first part of the swim and the triathlon. We do got to get to the bike, and we do got to get to the run, and we will. And so I don't feel that sense of frustration personally, and I hope nobody else does either, because every person is making a difference.
So after we left, Marc headed 2 miles up the beach and then 2 miles back the other way, basically until he'd filled up his bucket, and that tends to take him about an hour, and he does that every day. The scary part being that is just for this beach. If you look at it globally, there are 8 million metric tons of plastic waste that come from the land into our oceans every year. And to put that into a little bit of perspective, imagine a bag full of plastic, well, 5 of them for every foot of coastline in the world. And the scariest part being, in 10 years' time, that is thought to more than double. Just have a think about that for a moment. Well, thanks to Marc from Surfrider for his time, and also for lending us some props. And you're probably wondering why we are surrounded by this rubbish. Well, these are all things that he's picked up from this beach. We've got bottle tops, a bit of artwork here, just to really raise awareness. We've got a bucket full of balloons, a 7-foot straw that's made up of lots of smaller straws. But you might be wondering why here on the GTN Show we're talking about plastic in our oceans. Well, as triathletes, we obviously swim in the ocean, we race and we train there, so that in part makes us responsible. But also as sport, and triathlon is no exception in this, we do use a lot of plastic.
Yes, and given how much plastic is ending up in the oceans, you could ask the question, why are we not bumping into it all the time when we're swimming? Well, if you've perhaps been out in a boat and far out to sea, you'll start to have an appreciation of how vast the ocean is. So wouldn't it perhaps be reasonable to think that this plastic's getting dispersed and there's no chance for marine life to bump into it? Well, the answer to that is no, because due to the way that the ocean currents work, this plastic all congregates into 4 large sections or patches of garbage. Now, the largest of those is not just out there, but a little bit out there, and the Great Pacific Garbage Patch is 4 times the size of the state of Texas, which is enormous, and that lies somewhere between the west coast of US mainland and Hawaii.
Yeah, the scary part is, because it congregates there, that plastic gets broken down into smaller and smaller pieces, becoming microplastics, and that then poisons the marine life that are there, and then in the long term, that marine life ends up on our plates. So we are, in a sense, actually being poisoned by our own plastic we're putting in the oceans. And Marc's got a sad story just to bring that to life.
The other day I was walking right down here, and some people were stopped looking at something on the beach, and I said, oh, it's a plastic bag. So I bent over to pick it up, and it was actually a jellyfish had washed up. Okay. And lo and behold, on the top of my bag, I had a plastic bag, and I put it right next to it. It was identical in shape, size, and color. So the things that eat jellyfish would easily suck that bag right in, plug up their system, make them feel full. I'm gonna plug this beautiful thing that was on 30 or 60 Minutes the other night on the Albatross on Wake Island. The parents go out to sea, dive, pick up things. They're looking for squid and stuff that they naturally eat, but they're picking up plastic, not knowing the difference. Putting it down as mama do to their baby chicks with their mouths open. The chicks are dying, and when they open them up, it looks like the inside of this bucket. It's just full of plastic. So it's terrible. Plastic it was good for things that we need, but we need to minimize it, and it's going to kill the planet.
It makes you feel sick, doesn't it? But it's us. We're
we
the
have
ones
a
who can
choice.
do the difference. Yeah.
It is awfully difficult for us to wrap our heads around the scale of this problem, but perhaps by taking a step back and looking at our own sport, we can get a better handle on it. We are all guilty of using plastics when we race in a triathlon, be that water bottles or gel wrappers, and these are all prime examples of single-use plastics. Any clothing or sporting purchases that we make generally come wrapped in plastics. To make a difference, then there is a combined effort required, and although there is a long way to go, it is really encouraging to see sporting brands and event organisers starting to change to make that difference.
Yeah, so small differences. Now, we've already seen here out in North America that Ironman are starting to make a difference. Ironman Boulder have been leading the way, actually. They've been using compostable cups in their events, been working with the local authorities, and any leftover spare food they're donating to charity, which is great. They've also been reusing their signs and lots of other initiatives going on up there, and they're actually rolling that out across North America. And it was great to see at the 70.3 Oceanside on the weekend. They had compostable cups, and they had a recycle bucket, and the volunteers are making sure that went in there. So these are little steps that are happening. I actually did a triathlon last year, the Croyd Ocean Triathlon, and I think that was the first event in the UK to solely use no single-use plastic. So yes, they still needed plastic for cable ties, but they're going to take them again and use them next year. But they again had compostable cups, but they made sure that they went to a compostable centre just up the road. They also, when you finish, with something I really liked, instead of giving out a water bottle when you finish a race and you're thirsty, they gave reusable coffee cups, and then it was just a water fountain, so you could just go back and have as much water as you wanted. And my favourite bit was actually the after race nutrition or refuel, and they had homemade energy balls that were just on a tray, so you went and took one of those, which is another, it was yummy, as well as not using any wrappers. And we've seen the London Marathon start to introduce compostable cups to try and reduce their plastic as well.
Yeah, and there are other companies starting to change how they do things to make a difference. Parley are partnering with Adidas to make swimsuits out of old fishing nets. Zogs are starting to make swimsuits out of regenerated fibres that are from post-consumer materials. So there are definitely other companies, right?
Yeah, there's Batoko, which is a small independent swimwear brand in the UK, and they solely make, their strapline is something like, our swimsuits are rubbish. I quite like that, and they're cool designs as well. Well, there are more and more brands that are starting to make an effort, and quite a lot. If you just do a little bit of a search, that will be using recyclable products, and even some brands that are solely making their garments or their products out of only recycled material, which is great, but it's not just the plastic that we see, it's also those smaller bits. So if you look at the label on your clothing, lots of man-made fibres are basically made of microfibres that contain tiny bits of plastic, and the problem being when you wash those in your normal washing machine, they're so small that they'll actually get through your filter and they'll still end up in our oceans.
Yeah, so what perhaps can we do? Well, just by being more aware is a great start. We can start by supporting events that are trying to be sustainable, but just by trying to be more aware of your actual triathlon purchases is a really good place to get going. And on that note, we actually asked a few of the pros what they thought we could do to help.
Let's start with something really simple. Don't litter. Because if you throw your gel packet where there's no aid station and nobody to pick it up, you know where it's probably gonna go? The ocean. It gets flushed down through the drains, goes straight into the water. Don't do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the events themselves kind of produce quite a bit of waste. So I think that one of the main things is just really encouraging people, have trash cans available, have stuff available to drop the goo wrappers, drop the water bottles and stuff, so that nothing's getting into the ocean in the first place. And then, afterwards, it's being conscious of what's making sure that we leave the place cleaner than we found it.
I mean, I guess just awareness, so recycling more, also volunteering to help clean things up, so it doesn't need to be often, maybe volunteering once a month, something like that, just to go in and clean things up.
I am aware that it's easy for us to sit here and talk about it and almost sound like we're preaching, but the more the word gets out there, I really do feel that will help. And as triathletes, there's lots of small things, and if we do all of those, we will start to make a difference.
Yes, so that leads us nicely onto our GTN poll, where we thought we would ask you the question, what do you think is the most impactful way for stopping the amount of plastics that ends up in our oceans? So the options we've got for you are do a beach cleanup, or stop using single-use plastic, or reusing all of the plastic that you use, or of course another option. And if you want to let us know, please click on the link.
Well, last week in the GTN poll, we asked you, do you reckon that the general public know what triathlon is? And in at 1%, that was yes and can name a star triathlete, which is pretty shocking. I mean, it would be great if everyone could name a star triathlete, but yeah, good on you guys for having the faith there. 5% of you said yes and people would be able to name the order of our sport. 24% said people have no idea. That's probably a bit more realistic. But I like the optimism here because 70% of you said yes, the general public would be able to name all three sports in triathlon.
So this week we have one that has been sent in to us by Bath University Tri Club. So let's take a look.
Not bad. I reckon it's good enough for a top 10. What do you reckon, Fraser?
Yeah, I think I'll just sneak in there.
Well, if you still want a chance to get into the top 10, or even better, beat everybody else and get to the top of the leaderboard, all you need to do is get someone to film you taking off your wetsuit, whether that's at home, at your local pool, or even down at the ocean. Just send it in using the uploader. Well, this weekend has been packed full of top-class racing, and it really does feel like the race season has got underway here in the Northern Hemisphere. And as we're here in the United States, we thought we'd start with Ironman 70.3 Galveston.
Yeah, and there was actually a little bit of drama down there in Texas because there was a local storm came in really quickly mid-race, and unfortunately the race organisers had to first suspend and then cancel the whole age group event, which was a real shame. But before that, there was a pro race that managed to finish. And on the women's side, we had South African Jenny Seymour, who essentially dominated the race. She finished up with a blistering 1:18 half marathon to close out the race, 3 minutes in front of American Leslie Smith and a further 2 minutes into third place for fellow American Jackie Herring.
Well, on the men's race, it was Andrew Starkovich who had a 44-second deficit after the swim, but that didn't really pose any problem because by T2, he had a 7-minute lead over Matt Hansen. Matt Hansen managed to make a little bit of a dent in that on the run, but nothing significant. So Andrew Starkovich took the win, Matt Hansen second, and Matt Russell managed to run up to finish third. Well, now, as we are obviously here in sunny California, we were out here for the Oceanside 70.3. Let's find out exactly what happened in that race.
Yeah, so first up with the male results, we had a lead group of 5 exiting the beach here, led by American athlete Eric Lagerstrom. That group had Ben Knut in it, who pushed on to establish an early lead in the ride. Soon was joined by Australian Sam Appleton, and at midway point they had established quite a lead. But unfortunately, Sam crashed, and we learned has broken his collarbone. So best wishes to you, Sam. Going back to Ben, though, he was actually joined by American athlete Rudy von Berg on the bike, and they then pushed forward to establish a 4.5-minute buffer by the time they hit T2 over a chase group that included UK athlete Adam Bowden. Now, Ben and Rudy effectively ran head-to-head for the full half marathon. Very exciting stuff. But Ben Knut took the win in 3 hours 49, some 7 seconds ahead of Rudy. So very tight indeed. However, Adam ran through with the fastest run split of 1 hour 11, 56 seconds and was some 4 minutes adrift.
Well, on the women's side, it was Holly Lawrence who had an incredibly strong start with this sea swim. She had a 30-second lead on a chasing pack of 6 athletes, including the likes of Daniela Reif. Well, it didn't take Daniela long to catch Holly on the bike, and by 20k, she actually opened up a lead, and she did not look back. She came into T2 with an almost 7-minute lead over Holly Lawrence, which just shows incredible riding. And she didn't look back. She was very much contained and controlled out on the run. Then Holly was in second, and then there was a chasing group of Paula Finley, Sarah True and Ellie Salthouse, who were all battling it out for third. And onto the run, not much change at the front. Daniela maintained that lead and looked incredibly comfortable. She came home in a time of 4:09.19 to absolutely smash that record here at Oceanside that was set by Annie Haug last year. Holly actually closed a little bit and finished just 5 minutes back in second place, and it was Ellie Salthouse who had the strongest run of the chasing 3 to finish third.
Now, there was also full distance Ironman racing happening this weekend with a packed field competing down in Port Elizabeth at Ironman South Africa, which was the Ironman African Regional Championships. Now, there was some rough weather came in, forcing the organisers to cut the swim distance to a half distance, but that didn't deter usual speedy swimmer Josh Amberger leading out of the water and creating a gap. There was a large group eventually formed on the bike, and by T2 it was American athlete Ben Hoffman who had created a 2-minute buffer. And he simply extended this lead as he charged through a 2-hour 39 marathon to take the victory in Africa for the 3rd time, which is quite incredible. Second place finisher was German athlete Niels Fromhold, who has also come second to Ben at that race before, actually. And rounding out the podium was Michael Weiss from Austria.
On the women's side, there was also a defending champion. It was Lucy Charles, who had a bit of pressure on her shoulders going back into this race. She had company in the swim from Lauren Brandon, and it was actually Anya Ipak who had a really strong bike ride to come into T2 first. But Lucy went on to run her first ever marathon, breaking the 3-hour marker, and she ended up taking the win by 5 minutes. Second place went to Gurats Fradas of Spain, and then it was home favourite Amelia Watkinson who took the 3rd spot on the podium. But there's also racing in Europe this weekend. It was Challenge Salou, and in that the men's race was a 70.3 race. Peter Hemmerich took the win. It was Pablo de Pina Gonzalez second in the men's race, and then third it was Thomas Davis.
Yeah, and in the women's side of racing in Salou, we had a winner from Judith Vaquera. We had second place to Daniela Blemmel of Germany, and third place was UK athlete Emma Pallant.
Well, we're now ready for this week's Caption Competition, and as we're in California, we're getting bright. Well, actually, we have some new swim caps.
Yeah, so let's have a look at this picture that was actually sent in to us by Chris, which is of a starting line with a little bit of a difference.
Yeah, well, we had quite a lot of actually really good suggestions this week. We've narrowed it down to 3. So our first runner-up comes in from Schwok van der Merwe. He says, when the start of the race is so close, you can practically smell it.
Yeah, it's good. And on that note of smelling, Robert Nastasi suggested, I love the smell of the starting line in the morning.
Can't say I do, but anyway, I like it all the same. But our winner, and this one I think is brilliant, comes from Ven Heng, says, I moustache a question. Anyone knows if the gun has gone off?
Yeah, that is very clever. We're impressed with that one.
Yeah, well done. You're going to be getting one of these GTN caps. You even get to choose a colour, so make sure you get in contact for that. And now this week, for your chance to win one of our brightly coloured caps, you just have to give a caption suggestion for this photo where Javier Gomez was congratulating Luke Williams.
Yeah, so I like the idea of this young Aussie congratulating the old grizzled Spaniard across the finish line. So I guess there's something about the new meeting the old.
I'm sure Javier Gomez would love to be described as the old grizzly Spaniard. But anyway, carry on, Fraser.
Yeah, well, whatever suggestions you perhaps have for your captain comments, please leave them down there in the comment section.
Well, as you could probably tell, both myself and Fraser and all of us here at GTN are very passionate about trying to protect our oceans from the plastic. So much so that the rest of our team who weren't filming right now have been busy whilst we've been here doing our lines, finding extra bits of plastic. But it just proves that every little helps. So if you guys can go away and talk about this to your friends, who can then talk about it to their friends, we can all start to make a bit of a difference.
Yeah, indeed. Now, that has been it for our show this week. But on the note of swimming and getting into the ocean, if you fancy having one of these rather funky California-inspired colourful caps, then we have them in our shop, so you can follow the link for that. Hopefully you've enjoyed our video. Please hit the thumb up like button. Don't forget to click on our globe and subscribe. Get all the other videos on the channel. And if you want to see a video that I did around the age group transition and all the tech that was in there here at Oceanside, you can find that here.
And Fraser has been really busy because there's another tech video from the expo that Fraser made just here.